Søren NIELSEN. He's an architect from Denmark, and he's partner at Van Kusten Architects. And he has been responsible for planning and design of many buildings. He's also the director of research and development at the office at Van Kusten Architects. His main interest is in sustainability, but sustainability understood in the wider sense. And he is working especially on the usage of material and uses the outcome of its research to apply it on new projects, such as the usage of solid wood in the light gymnasium, of the usage of eelgrass in contemporary ways, on the vacation house on the island of Leso. And I must admit that this project really catch my interest when I saw it the first time. It's how, by the way, I came to discover Van Kusten Architects. And it's a really beautiful way of using a local resource and using its properties as a local plant, but also using its properties for insulation, waterproofing, I mean, all what plant could do in other ways. He's also been working since a long time on reuse material, and now working on a large project involving usage of reuse material for renovation, for large renovation. But his main work that he will speak today about is its work on the reuse material for the Nordic built component reuse that showcase and exhibit several ways of organizing construction waste, connecting them and presenting them in an aesthetic manner, so it can really be used as a wall material. So thanks a lot, Søren, again to be here today, and please, we are listening to you.
Yeah, thanks for your kind interest in my work and for the nice presentation. I will share my screen now, and let's see if does it work. Do you see my screen?
It's coming. It's here now. Thanks.
Yeah, and this is our office. And it's a very nice office. We are about 80, 85 architects. It's a medium-sized Danish architect office. And what we're doing here is mainly designing affordable, sustainable housing. And we've been doing that for 50 years now. So we are not young anymore. I've been in the office for the last 32 years, so I'm getting older too. And I have to click and yeah, and now I can shift. I'm just going to show you a few buildings so you can get an idea of what we're doing. This is very, very cheap, affordable social housing in Denmark, and it has become our speciality to obtain a high quality within very low budgets. And this is an example. This is 20% cheaper than ordinary social housing in Denmark, and yet we have succeeded in getting nice materials and in a kind of specialized shape, this crescent shape, and also when we are doing projects in Denmark, particularly, we are trying to mix different people, different ownerships, like here in Copenhagen, and I think this is typical. We have private-owned apartments, and we have social housing, and it's mixed together, so we cannot tell what is what. And then it's all placed upon a public swim bath, so it's there's accessibility for the rest of Copenhagen, for the public to share this very nice place. And we also have a large community house in the end of the development. That is a typical strategy for Van Kusten. Sometimes we are doing very large projects and even very expensive projects like this in Oslo, which is, I think it's the most expensive housing project in Oslo, and I think we are dealing with square meter prices of 50,000 euros. But so the people living here, they are very well off, if not super rich, but they have to share this very nice place right next to the Munch Museum and the opera. They'll have to share it with the rest of Oslo because there's a public promenade and a bathing facility. So that is very typical. I think it's not typical that we're doing expensive projects, but we stick to the ideas about sharing with the facilities with the public. And as Mathieu said, sometimes we are doing very small and experimental projects like this modern seaweed house on Læsø, which I'm not going to talk about today, but it's about using a biogene material in a quite a new way. It has been used on Læsø before in traditional architecture, but we try to reinterpret it. And now I'm getting closer to what I'm supposed to talk about today, and the Nordic Built component reuse project. But before I get to the very project, I because I'm a teacher too in Copenhagen, and it's important for me to that you understand the background for this project. And the background is that we have been working with sustainability in many years, for decades. And in the beginning, it was mostly about saving energy in buildings and reducing heat loss, etc. But in the recent years, I would say 10, 15 years, we have been working with preservation of resources, because the resources are, there's a lot of embedded climate footprint and energy in the resources, which is also why you are now working with the circular concepts, of course. But I've tried to make a hierarchy of resource preservation here. And it has 3 levels, and we have a Plan A strategy, which is a cultural strategy. That strategy says that if you're an architect, you should do your utmost to make the most beautiful building that you are able to do. You should go for making a United Nations World Heritage, a quality building of that kind, so it will be listed and it will never be demolished, because people love it and they like it, it's popular, and it is beautiful. If that should fail, sometimes it fails, even though you are very ambitious, and you should have a Plan B, which is a functional strategy, and it's about the robustness of the building. It's a geometrical disposition, so it could be converted from one function to another. So if you are working with, if you are designing a housing project, for instance, you should consider how it could be converted to offices or schools or any other functions. Also, you should consider that the kind of household you have today might change over time, and so you should also be able to change the building over time and use it in several ways with versatile rooms, etc. If that should also fail, because we might need to demolish the building for other reasons, we need a Plan C, which is a technical strategy, and that is where you find the notion of circularity, circular technology, and the main criteria is reversibility, that you are able to not only to account for how to construct the building, but also how to deconstruct it in a way so that enables reuse of its components. So that is the three levels, but the most important here for architects, most important is that the plan B and the plan C, and that is the red arrows here, it has an architectural and a social potential. So you can use the functional robustness and the technical reversibility in order to enable user participation to change the buildings in its lifetime, and you are also able to make the technical necessities, the assembly details into architectural motives, which might from which the building will gain in beauty. And I show you an example here, which is not our work. It is Peter Zumthor, who you all know, and his Bregenz Museum. In this museum, the facade is made of glass panes, and they are hung with small, delicate stainless steel brackets. But they are hung in such a way that it could be disassembled. It's a very simple geometry, and it's stacked. There's a slight overlapping. But it could be disassembled. You could take them down again. You could resell them. You could reuse them in another house. That will never happen because Peter Zumthor is a very great architect. So he has followed the Plan A strategy, and that is probably going to work in his case. This building will never be demolished. So but the point is, we should try to make a building which will never be demolished. But which can be demolished if necessary. So it's not because we want our buildings to be demolished or changed, but they should be able to do it. Otherwise, we risk wasting the resources. And here's a Vandkunsten version of this. Instead of this is cement fiber boards, and instead of screwing them in the attachment, we make a small bracket so they are squeezed on the wooden structure beneath it. That is very, very small, very simple, and very cheap, but it becomes a kind of jewelry, just like Peter Zumthor at a much higher level and much higher cost. His small brackets become an ornament, and the jewelry, and the same could be said about this very simple renovation project. Because you had just had a visit from Ilma Durmisevic, you know now all the technical principles of design for disassembly, so I won't repeat them here. The main here are the most basic of them, and you can study them if you didn't get it from Ilma. The most interesting is, or the most important is reversibility. Reversibility is the main technical criteria, and then of course everything becomes more easy if you do not use too many arches or triangles or something which can never be which could never fit into another building. What is important here is that there are three ways of working with this the technical principles. And I would say that the first one, the upper one, tectonic design practice, that is what we would like to do as architects. We would like to make the construction become the motive. The motive is the same as the constructive necessity. So you can see how the building are constructed, and that is what makes the beauty of the building and its identity. And then you can have, on the other hand, you can have an atectonic design practice. And that is where you find that the construction is a medium for the motive. Say you have, for instance, you have sketched something up in SketchUp. It's just white boxes, and you don't know really what it's a volumetric composition, but you don't know how to construct it. So you hand it over to a constructing architect, and he says, well, I can do it this way and that way, and you don't want to see the construction behind it. You just want to render your SketchUp model as it looks on the screen. And then as the last strategy, that is where we find the engineers or the parametric designers. The motive is a result from constructive solutions, and that there is no motive really. That is the same as there's no motive. There's a solution. Engineers, they are super good at making solutions, but they cannot create a motive. That is your job as the architect, the architectural designer. That is quite important to me. That we follow a tectonic design practice, and that is what we have defined in the Nordic Built Component Reuse project. That we should use design but assembly methodologies, and we should follow a tectonic design practice. As an inspiration in my work, I've read the Danish sculptor Willy Ørskov, who has made, and I don't think it's translated actually, but someone should do it actually. But he operates with the two kinds of constructive principles, two kinds of form-giving principles, constructive and destructive principles, and he's talking about a number of elaborations you can do on materials and with materials and components, and they are named in the ing version of the activity, fencing, superimposing and enclosing, sheltering, etc., or destructive, tearing, shredding, cutting, and that becomes an inspiration here. I tried some years ago to create an alphabet of tectonic motifs, because I think there are many more letters than I show here. And some of my students sometimes come up with a new letter, but this way of seeing a motive like something, an activity of construction. You can all, how can I describe it? If you lean up against the wall and the wall is supporting you, then you are. We have a leaning motive, and the same goes for all kinds of building components, that they can be defined. Their activity in the structure or the construction can be defined as actions of construction. And to show it here, I have analyzed the detail here, and to the right you have the technical principles, and to the left you have the architectural motives coming along with it. They are always coming in parallel in architecture, not in engineering. In engineering, you only have the technical principles, but they have not been defined really, and they have not been turned into a language with a grammar. So I think it's productive for you to be aware of this difference between technical principles and architectural motives, and you can try it on your own projects, and it's fun. Give it a try and see if you can separate these things, because they always come together as a pair, but sometimes the motive is missing because it's not conscious. It's not something you have defined. It's not something you have cultivated. And then I'm going to here's another kind of background for our project, because we are also reusing whole buildings, and that is something I think we should incorporate that in our design for disassembly strategies, also to learn how, in order to learn how what kind of beauties, beauty potentials are embedded in the conflicts or the contrasts between the old and the new. And this is an old shipyard building that it was bound for demolishment actually in Copenhagen, and the municipality had planned that it should be demolished. No one thought they could use it to anything, but then there was a contractor or a developer who got the idea that it could be transformed for luxury homes for football players and pop singers, people like that. And it was, in the end, it was converted, or the program was changed, so it became more or less ordinary housing. But now this building is safe, and it's a part of it's a landmark. It's very important in this area. Actually, it has become a monument or a monumental building, a landmark. So there's also a part of a collective history embedded in these old buildings. So very important to preserve old buildings. And only if you cannot preserve the whole building, then you can. The next important is to preserve the materials or its components. Also, this very. I think you can see my arrow here. That there are some of the stories here which are absorbing the parking in this whole area, and that if we had not had this building, probably there would have been cars all over. And so it's a very happy preservation. Yeah, here you can see the original columns, which are not cleaned or painted or anything, and the new balconies, and here is the car levels. And here's where in the one end you can sail in with a kayak, and you find a street stair going up to a street, interior street, which looks like this from the other end. And my point is that something like this could never be designed from new. I mean, you would never ever make a housing development with this design if you had to start from scratch without the old building. It would be too expensive. It would be too strange. You could never make it up. You could never have interiors like this, which actually you can imagine how the value of this structure in a home is also economically valuable. These apartments are super expensive now because you have this randomness, the accidental geometry of the existing building with the tension between the program and the existing building. So this idea of that the weathered materials and the time as a dimension in a building generates a beauty which is far more interesting than any fancy shape or iconic design that you could imagine. That is very important for our work with in general, but also with reused materials. And then another important idea about the design for disassembly, or not idea perhaps, but one of the solutions really is to build in timber instead of concrete, because timber is by nature designed for disassembly. It's always reversible because you cannot, perhaps you can glue, you can make glue lamp beams, but but the beams themselves are not glued to anything. They are attached with bolts and screws, etc. So they can always be disassembled. And that was an example from Denmark. We made a timber structural system with an engineer company, and we won this competition, which is a housing scheme for social housing in Aarhus, the next biggest city in Denmark. And it's a typical vandkunstenplan with small groups of blocks in different shapes, and so they have each their neighborhood, and then they have a greater neighborhood with a large garden in the middle. And I'm not going to talk about that today, but it's a tradition with us that we try to make these social neighborhood hierarchies in order to facilitate the meeting between people. Well, I'll see again. And but the technical principle is, of course, that it's assembled by means of details like this, combination with steel and the timber. And there's a bit concrete too. We have the staircase, which is concrete for fire protection and to as a load carrying structure. But then we have around it's a perimeter of a load bearing facade with pillars and beams. So it's very open. It's a very open system. You can place dividing walls wherever you want, or you can place facade fillings in this framework almost where you want. You have to respect the stabilizing panels around the corners, but otherwise you are free to convert this building, and this convertibility or this flexibility in the configuration is there's shown an example here where you have the same floor plan, and then you can place the walls in very many different ways, so you can change over time, or you can make a lot of different housing units by means of the system, by means of this structural system, which is designed for disassembly or based on design for disassembly, circular principles. You will. And that was what I referred to when I talk about the social potential of design for disassembly. You can change over time. You can people living there, they can tear down a wall, and they put a new one up. They can decide themselves. Also in the facades, we are very free to place windows, which is an advantage when you work with. We have a very strict daylight regime in Denmark, and we have to simulate together with the engineers the daylight intake. So we have to optimize room for room, and in a facade we can, like this, we can place the windows where it's optimal for the daylight, and at the same time we get a variation in the facades, and so it's allowed to change over time. It's not very important that the architect have defined everything. We define the basic structure, and then it could change over time. There might be added balconies which we could not afford in the project, etc. So it's what we say is that a project, an architecture or a building is not a it's not a static object. It's a dynamic project. So it's a kind of open design idea. And by the way, it's the tallest timber structure in Denmark. We are very much behind our neighbor countries, and because of our strict regulations. And we also, I don't know how it is in Turkey, but I think in traditional Turkish architecture, you have roof overhanging roofs, and we have reinvented that because we don't have any impregnation, any painting of the wooden cladding, and so we wanted to be protected from the construction, from cordon elements, and from the roofs, and at the same time we think it's psychologically it's more protecting. It's a nice thing to have these roofs, and we are sick and tired actually of this cubist modernist developer architecture with flat roofs that are everywhere in the world. Doesn't allow to see what kind of place you are in, and disrespect the context and the regional history and anything. So yeah, we are trying to reinvent the roofs, which also is nice when you have covered your access way. Also, we try to praise the weathering of materials like timber, which changes its colors over time, which is not a problem. It's not a technical problem. It's some find it's a cosmetic problem, but like this place in Japan, it's regarded a kind of ornament, something more or less noble. Also in Switzerland, actually. I don't know how it is with the old Turkish wood buildings, if they are allowed to weather. And now we are approaching slowly to the project I'm going to talk about. It started with this very huge renovation project, 1,001 homes in southern suburb to Copenhagen should be renovated, and we won this project. It's very big, so it takes more than 10 years from our ideas until it has been completed. So it's still under construction. Some of it is finished, but what we did back in 2012, when we did the competition, was to define 3 capitals of building materials. One is the economic resale value, insofar that you have a market for reselling of used building materials, which we hardly have in Denmark, but we are getting a few possibilities recently. And the other capital or asset is the embedded energy, which is quite easy to calculate. When that is what you do when you make life cycle assessments, and that is significant as well. But the last one is the most interesting, but and also the hardest to define. It's the cultural value. The cultural value of knowing that a component has been used in another function, or in another place, or in the same place but in a new function, or that is interesting because there's a narrative dimension, which of course you will have to reproduce to fully enjoy. But there might be traces of use, or other marks like company stamps or something that tells a story of this building, and at the same time gives the architecture a time dimension. I mean, I think we should see buildings as something completely other than a car, for instance. It's very important, if a car should keep its value, that it looks new. A car is a very fixed design, and it should always look new. But a building is the opposite. It's something which are allowed to be worn, to change its expression over time, to absorb the time, and to pile it up and become more and more interesting. The more history it gets, and the more traces of history it has. That is something I think you should consider. Some particularly clients, they think that a building should look new always, and that is that produces more value. But I think they miss a dimension. What we had to do in this renovation was to replace the terrain slab. Actually, there was only a plastic membrane from in the beginning of the 60s, and so there were mold under the floorboards, and we had to provide a new terrain slab, and in order to do that, we had to remove 80,000 square meters of very high quality beach parquet, and we simply, when we found out how much it was, we simply could not bring ourselves to fuel it into the combustion plants. That is what we do in Denmark normally with the timber waste. So we proposed to reuse it as walls for wall cladding in the renovated houses, and we did it in. We did some test versions. This one was with the inside out, and you can see the patterns from rafters beneath the floors, and you can also find some stamps from the factory, and that is something we tested it. We made the tenants evaluate it, and they quite liked it actually. But when they had to, so we put it on the menu where they could choose how they were allowed to customize the renovation. But no one, not a single one, chose these reuse solutions, and I thought it was because they didn't understand it, they didn't appreciate it, or rather they said they liked it, but when they didn't choose it, I think it was too hard for them to defend the choice towards friends and families and neighbors. Why do you have these strange walls? That was what we thought. But last year I had a collaborationship with an anthropologist, and she went to interview the tenants which has moved into these pilot blocks, and she found that they were perfectly able to reproduce a narrative that they thought it was very beautiful. They liked it. They thought it was funny that you could see where the rafters had been, and they knew this factory where it had been produced has been closed afterwards. But so what was the problem? The problem was that they had to pay a little bit more. They got a little bit higher rent if they chose this version, because it's more affordable to knock up a gypsum board wall than the carpenter's work needed for this reused solution. So, and they wouldn't, because it was their own floors, their own old floors, they would not pay for. They thought it was not fair that they should pay additional rent for that. So that was, but I was deeply frustrated actually, because no one chose it. We also we proposed that some of the additional material were reused for small entrance zones where they could. We called it X boxes, where we designed a number of them, and then people could make them themselves, or they could hire a carpenter to do it, and it was pre-approved by the municipality, and we made a kind of IKEA manual, so it was easy for them. But no one did it. Actually, they didn't care about it. The people living there, because I think the average age was too high. It's mostly do-it-yourself. Do-it-yourself is something that the young family do. It's not the retired people, for instance. So that was not that was a failure too. But yeah, we managed to get to make a number of small pilot blocks, and so we could see how it would work. And what happened with the floors was that we in the tender material, we, as a condition, we required that the contractor, the demolition contractor, should make a collaboration with someone who could resell it, and that became this Genbyg company in Copenhagen, where you can actually buy these floors now on the website, which is very nice. So we saved the floors actually, but not on site. They are transported. Yeah, they sell a lot to Germany actually. But because I was frustrated, I applied for some funding for a larger project, innovation and research project in reuse of building components, and that became this Nordic built component reuse. And we were granted some money from a Danish energy ministry, and we worked with it a couple of years actually. And what we did was we tried a lot of materials, different materials, and and we focused on there are many reuse strategies, but we focused on the repurposing, which is reuse in another function. And you know probably the other kinds of reuse: recovery, reuse in the same function. Upcycling is reuse after redesigning and upgrading. But we thought it was most interesting to change the function, because we could, by doing so, we could change the component from a part of the building with a shorter lifetime to a part of the building with a longer lifetime. So that would be upgrading on the component level. And as in the end, we made this report or booklet about the project, which we called ReBeauty. And I guess you have found the link where you can download it from our webpage. And here's a diagram over our methodology. It's an explorative study because we did not know what would work. So it's a simple combination. It's a combination matrix. We take any kind of component, and then we pass it through the building part classification system, and I'm sure you have a classification system in Turkey as well. We have one which is made in Sweden, and but then you make the component meet any part of the of a possible building, and then you find sometimes that you can upgrade to a higher lifetime, or you can downgrade it. And what we tried to avoid was downgrading to furnitures. You can make reused furnitures of everything. So it's too easy. It's not interesting. It's much more interesting to take something with a short lifetime and make it make it become a component with a very long lifetime. And I'll show you some examples later. And we had to do everything by ourselves, find the materials in containers, and we hired access to a workshop, and we designed it, of course, and we evaluated with life cycle assessments. And here are some of the results. This is reuse of doors, massive wooden doors, and some decorative boards on top of it, and together it became. It could be assembled into a wall, a flexible wall, which would be easy to disassemble again. And you could ask again, why is it so important that it's decorative? Yeah, it's because this reseller of reused building components, Genbyg, they said that they're most of their clients are well-off, middle-aged, well-educated women from the better parts of Copenhagen, and they like this shabby chic style. They have a high degree of self-esteem, and no one would ever suspect that they could not afford something new. So that is why we have this semi-romantic culture about reused materials, which it's a bit ridiculous perhaps, but we don't mind who our first movers are. Actually, it might be upper class women, but they are good enough for us. So we would like to make it as decorative as possible. We also exhibited this in Venice at the Biennale, and we juxtaposed it with classical Scandinavian furniture, because these furniture, perhaps not the chairs we have here because they're quite common, but they take quite high prices at auctions. So it seems that even though they are used and worn and weathered, or they become greasy perhaps, they become more valuable by having an age. And we just thought, imagine that it was the same with building components, that they increased in value over time. When they aged, they became not waste, but they became noble and attractive and expensive. That would be a very attractive future for architecture, I think. And then we tried something nice, cutting up concrete slabs, floor slabs. That was made quite beautiful walls or masonry. Quite beautiful, actually, very decorative and ornamental, and a very bad idea, actually, because when we did the life cycle assessment, it was worse than making new concrete, because this cutting up used a lot of industrial diamonds, which are produced in a very in a not so environmental friendly way. This is very productive and very nice, actually. That is folding and flattening thin plate steel from roofs, for instance, rolling it so it becomes flat and cutting it up, and very decorative. And that is, I think here we have some of the keys to produce value out of waste. I mean, if something is just has been teared down and there are holes perhaps somewhere, and it's rusty and it looks like trash, but in the moment you put some design design care into the into the material and process it and mount it in a decorative way, then I think you've created something valuable, something where you would not like to waste it. I mean, it's strange, this design, this magic of designing, that you can create something worthless, or you can change something worthless into something really valuable just by folding a bit and flattening a bit. We actually, we also exhibited that in Venice, and then we tried something really difficult to reuse insulated glass panels. Try to fix it to structures which we could use for balconies, for instance, access balconies. And the interesting thing here is that, well, we didn't really succeed. It was too wobbly. It didn't turn out well. But the interesting thing is that we have to find solutions to come about the differences in dimensions and the qualities. So we have to find a design principle that makes beauty out of this difficulty of having unknown dimensions. So there's, I think this illustrates a kind of elastic concept where you could where these insulated glass panes, they could have any shape. They could be attached, nevertheless, to the structure. And I think we are here living to something which might become a more common condition in the future, that architects will have to deal with uncertainties and randomness. So we cannot just order a specific dimension. We have to design with what is at hand. We also have to tell our clients, we cannot tell you exactly how this facade is going to look like, but something approximately. And that is something new, which is, I think it's scaring to many architects, because they want to have completely control over that design, and it's even more scary to the clients. But I think the architecture that we will be able to generate with these uncertainties in the future is much more interesting than the controlled discipline that we have today. Yeah, and here are old windows which are planned and ordered in a frame. With some small delicate design, but this is simply which is like this, which is perhaps too easy to disassemble. I mean, children wants to pick the veggies out, but we made a version in a restaurant in Copenhagen with wing screws instead. And this was quite a success, actually. It was as you can see, it's ventilation ducts which has been flattened and hung up with small brackets used for slate. And yeah, we also exhibited that in Venice, and we experienced that we got calls from architects from other places in the world, and they asked where they could buy this, who produced it, who manufactured it, and we could tell, yeah, you can do it yourself. You can find these in any container and just roll them over with a lorry, as we did. And here's my colleague who was a part of the Nordic Build team, Katrine. She built her own house, and she chose to take her own medicine in terms of cladding with her house with these spiral ducts. And then we also tried something very the most disgusting materials we could find, old kitchen vinyl floors, and we tried to, what can we do with that material? Can we change? I mean, if we could make something beautiful out of this, we could make something beautiful out of anything in the world, because this is really nasty, gross material which should never exist. But we made pillars out of it and structured it into a facade or cladding, which was quite funny actually, but we came to like it. And I'll show you an example of how we have tried to use it in real life a little later. And glass bricks cut by a robot actually, very nice and very expensive material, very exclusive, which could be used for office buildings, for instance, or nightclub bars, or where you would typically find materials like that. And these paint tiles, very easy to reuse like this. And we are doing it in full scale now in a project. This project is going to be cladding this way. But I'm scared about the security or safety. I'm really afraid that someone should get one of these tiles if it falls down and should hit a child or anything. So we have had it tested in a wind machine, and we have it screwed, and there are brackets and there's safety everywhere in this construction. Because if we fail, if someone gets killed with, then the rumor goes that you cannot reuse materials ever, any materials ever. And we anticipated the future production where we would need robots, or at least very affordable staff. And when we evaluated this, all our products here, we made life cycle analysis, and they were very accurate. As you can see, we mapped it, the processes, many generations of reuse, and its end of life scenarios, and then we calculated the climate impact from each of the products, and as it's a dark blue, which is the reused project or the reused product, and compared to new facade panels in steel or aluminium, and the result is very significant in this case. It's a very good idea to reuse. Also a good idea to reuse wood, even though it doesn't have as much climate impact in the production of the virgin materials. Also very good for these window walls. And here you can see, as I told you, the concrete product, it failed completely. It's much worse than using new materials. But my point is that we should be honest about our hype of reuse. It's sometimes it's a solution. Sometimes it's nice. But you should not believe that reuse always is a good idea. It should be documented actually. Very good idea to reuse. And then my students have been working with similar projects, and they contribute with new ideas and products. every time. And here we have someone, they are working with gutters and making a facade material out of that in Copenhagen. And they have tried to this is, of course, it's a Photoshop collage, but it's a famous, nice building in Copenhagen by Lundgaard Tranberg Architects, and but they have changed the material here, and I think it works very well. It's very good with this round shape that you can. It's easy to curve the panels made from the gutters. And these two guys are from a project I did in Vienna, where we had an old office building. We could it was bound for demolishment, and we could take any element that we wanted from this building and turn it into something else, repurposing in the repurposing strategy. And what these two guys are doing is the ultimate reuse on component level that we can make, because they take cupboard what do you call it, doors, and cupboards, they are a part of they are furniture, and the furniture has at least office furniture. It has a relatively short lifetime, and much shorter than the building usually has. But they are transforming this into load-carrying, long-span structures, and by doing that, they take an element from the layer of the building with the shortest lifetime and turn it into the layer of the building with the longest lifetime, which is the structural part, actually. It looks like this, and it was even calculated by the engineering teachers, and it works. And so that was a great example. I think when you are doing your course, you should also see if you could take something with a short lifetime and turn it into something with a longer lifetime. Then that is the ultimate reuse strategy, I would say. And these girls are doing something similar. They are taking some blinding shutters from outside, and then they are transforming it into a beautiful facade with shingles. And then we are in the process in Denmark where we try to implement these ideas in small scale, because we are a bit afraid of introducing something which is not really where we have a little experience in large scale. It's too risky. It's too risky to fail in large projects, but it's okay to fail in smaller projects. And here we have some small recycling stations that we are doing in Roskilde, and they are made entirely from building parts, from buildings that have been demolished in the area. We screened the buildings before we did it, and we had it stored in a magazine. And when we are doing these small buildings, we are looking what do we have in the magazine or in the store, and then we are making the building on the basis of that. So it's a fantastic process, interesting process, because you are limited by what you have in the storage, but on the other hand, you get something. You get something that you can never ever design from scratch. And this is an example. It's the roof trusses are reused. It was from some larger trusses that was cut up, and yeah, here we have the roof tiles again. And a facade like this, it's made by skylight boxes, skylight volumes, and they are curving inwards. And notice the shadow we get from that. I mean, that is a detail, a kind of curtain. That is a detail that you would never ever be able to design in your computer or in your sketchbook. I mean, it's a gift to the architecture when by accident you get something like that. Same on the inside. This is the weathering of these skylights and this accidental smear of tar material, and I mean it's great. It's like something you can only find something like this in a museum of modern art. And this is one of the other, which is the most interesting part, is the vinyl facade, but it has also been made out of only reused materials. Here we have the vinyl facade. It's floor vinyl from offices, which has been pillow-shaped cladding, and it's I know it's ugly in a way, but it's right next to the Rock Museum in Newscan, and the whole atmosphere of this area is that the theme is rock and roll, and it's a little leather-like, and yeah, we couldn't do that everywhere, but I think we could do it exactly there. It's punk. It's a punk facade. You know the cable trays as a facade. And this is the last version. It has just been completed. Again, we have skylight panels, and then we have this huge beam of glue lamp, which is curved and which it was supposed to turn the other way around, but now we have turned it into a boat shape, and we could never ever have been allowed to design something like that if it was from new. It's a fantastic opportunity, and it's a very funny way to be an architectural designer, to have these materials and the components, and then try to just put them together in a meaningful way. And perhaps that was the last slide. Actually, this is the very last slide. It's my goodbye slide. So if you have any questions, I would be happy to hear them.
I should really thank you a lot for this presentation. I mean, I was expecting a presentation on your work only on this reused material, and we get the full explanation of all of these materials, how you connect it, how they can be connected for reusing, for deconstructing. That was really interesting and really important for all the students here to hear about it. So thanks a lot for this presentation. Really, it was really good, and seeing this material applied on real buildings, it's also very important to know that yes, research projects are good, but it is not only research. It is really something that can be used after if the result is good. So thanks a lot for sharing it with us. And I hope there are questions from some students or other participants to the meeting. So please, if you have any question, you can use the chat or use or directly open your microphone and ask a question. Anyone? Okay, it doesn't seem to have any questions, but I would have. I mean, it's a question and a comment at the same time. So I find it really interesting that not only you checked about the different material you could reuse and how to do, but then you check for the life cycle assessment. And then out of it, you said that these concrete blocks were not a good idea.
Yeah.
So okay, pardon, for the carbon footprint, it was not good. But as a material itself, because it prevents to use new resources. But I don't know how the life cycle assessment assessed about it, because it is preventing to use new resources because you already used existing resources.
Yeah. No, we are. The way we calculate it is that we replace something new, and when replacing a new product, it is very that is very good, of course. But we cannot. But when we compare it, we compare with the life cycle assessment of our processing with the data for new materials. But you could say you might allow yourself to subtract our process footprint from the new. Or is it the other way around? in order to assess how good it is.
Okay. No, I'm just trying to, because I was thinking from a material point of view, it's always better. But as you said, we need to check the full life cycle assessment because of the process also behind it that might.
If the process leads to more emissions than producing a new component, then it doesn't work. I mean, but at the same time, you should always be aware that these life cycle assessments, they come with an expiry date, and you cannot compare them from between countries or sometimes even between cities because the energy mix is different from place to place, and it also changes over time. So you will have to update relatively often. So there's no eternal truth here. That everything is very relative.
Of course. Okay, thanks. There are some comments in the chat about the aesthetic of your results, telling that it's a very creative art. So, and I totally agree with this also. My other question is, I mean, I have been also. You are telling you are not sure yet about integrating those work on large scale building because you're not sure about how they will, I mean, those materials, you are not sure about how it will behave, maybe not in the long run, but even in a short time, for example, those tiles that might be falling.
Yeah.
But when we check other architects also in Denmark, I mean, this Lendager group that have been also published a lot lately about reusing bricks facade into directly cladding. So for some materials, research are already done for it, or it's already tested, isn't it?
Yes, yeah, and we have also been reusing bricks in a lot of projects actually, but it's quite a common practice. So it's not so interesting. But the bricks is reusing bricks. That is obvious. That is one of the lower hanging fruits actually. Yeah, but a number of the materials that we have been working with in the research project, I would consider it quite risky, and I think it's very good to learn slowly how to reuse building components, and for that purpose, what you can call secondary architecture, smaller buildings which are not insulated perhaps, and where you do not require the same of its building physics. I think that is a very nice place to start a reusing practice. Also because it's very often combined with a primary architecture with a more permanent function perhaps, and it contributes a lot to the urban atmosphere of the place, that you have this contrast between the new and more solemn perhaps, and then the more free, more fancy, more playful secondary architecture, where you can introduce untraditional experimental solutions.
Yeah, and I really believe that's a solution to make also people used to this new image of the city and urban area by reusing material, because as you said, there are cultural issues on using these materials. I mean, yes, maybe for fancy materials for rich people, that it's not a question. They can afford whatever they want, so they can afford this. Yeah. But people just reusing it because they don't have other solutions, they might not feel happy about it. So I totally understand this problem and getting people used to, because it's everywhere public in the city. It might be one of the solutions, so people will use it without questioning in the future. Yeah. So, yeah. There's a question from Meltem Gurel, the dean of the faculty. She's stating, it seems that like repurposing materials require a skill set. Do you have or offer training in this?
Yes, I do wherever I teach, which is I'm teaching at the architect school, the Royal Academy in Copenhagen, and sometimes I'm a guest teacher. And I've been in Vienna and in Oslo, and next time it will be in Wuppertal in Germany. But otherwise, I would say that if for the technical principles, I think you could. There's a lot of literature actually. Elma Durmisevic, who lectured today, also she has made a dissertation, and along with a handful of academias, there are quite a lot of academic stuff at the library about it, and which could be downloaded from the university's web pages. So I think it's easy to acquire the technical skills. But the biggest challenge is to get a cultural experience to be able to it's a creative mindset. I think that you should welcome the randomness, or welcome the all the troubles. You should. That is how you always get the best architecture by welcoming the necessity and the troubles and the annoying random accidents that happens in a project.
Okay, so Meltem is thanking you and telling that your talk was very inspiring, that it gave us a lot to think. And I totally agree with it. Okay.
Well, yeah.
Okay, so yeah, since there is no more question, I can only thank you again a lot for it. And as we said before, I will share also with you the outcomes of our workshop, and I will be really happy to share it with you and to have also your comments on it. Thanks a lot again.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see what you're going to do, and yeah, and have a fun time with it.
Okay, thanks. Bye bye.
Bye bye.